Ms. Rosen, no. Mr. Kim, no. Mrs. Hyde Smith, aye. Mr. Murphy, no. Mr. Reed, no. Mr. Rono, no. Mr. Armstrong, aye. Mr. King, no. Mr. Banks, no. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Marshall, Aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Banks, aye. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mr. Ricketts, aye. Mr. Graham, aye. Ms. Cantwell, no. Ms. Hassan, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Coons, no. Mr. Hawley, aye. Ms. Also Brooks, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Budd, aye. Mr. Tuberville, aye. Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wicker. Aye. Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schmidt. Aye. Mr. Paul, Mr. Paul. Aye. Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rounds. Aye. Mr. Risch, Mr. Risch. Aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47. The motion to table is agreed to.
Mr. President, I withdraw Senate Amendment number 4421.
Senator has that right.
And I call up Husted Amendment number 4732 to the motion to concur with amendment.
The clerk will report.
The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, for Mr. Husted, proposes an amendment number 4732 to amendment number 4420.
I ask that the reading be dispensed with,
Without objection.
and I send a cloture motion to the desk for Senate Amendment number 4732.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a closed debate on amendment number 4732 to the motion to concur in the House message to accompany S1383 with substitute amendment number 4420, an act to establish the Veterans Advisory Committee on Equal Access and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to refer the House message on S1383 to the Committee on Rules and Administration with instructions to report back forthwith with amendment number 4772.
The clerk will report.
The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, moves to refer the message to the Committee on Rules and Administration to report back with instructions being amendment number 4772.
Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays on my motion.
Is there sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
Mr. President, I have an amendment to the instructions.
Clerk will report.
The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, proposes an amendment number 4773 to the instructions of the motion to refer.
Mr. President, I ask the reading be dispensed with,
Without objection.
and I ask for the yeas and nays on my amendment.
Is there sufficient second?
Second.
There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
Mr. President, I have a second-degree amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report.
The senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, proposes an amendment number 4774 to amendment number 4773.
Mr. President, I have a second-degree amendment at the desk. Oh, sorry. I ask that the reading be dispensed with,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to calendar number 311, H.R. 7147.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 311, H.R. 7147, an act making further consolidated appropriations and so forth and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks.
Mr. President,
Senator from Connecticut.
I'd ask that we dispense with the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, in a few moments, I'm going to call up for a vote, a resolution on a privileged motion to end the war in Iran. I'm going to be joined on the floor by several of my colleagues, all of us here in astonishment that 4 weeks into the most significant conflict in the Middle East, in most of our careers in this body, 12 plus Americans killed, $2 billion at least being spent every day, thousands dead throughout the region, we have still not yet had a single hearing in the United States Senate on the war in Iran. We have not had a debate on a war authorization. We have not had a vote to allow senators to weigh in up or down as to whether they want the United States to be at war again in the Middle East. This is an extraordinary moment, and I know we risk engaging in hyperbole these days, coming down to the floor and naming one moment as extraordinary after another moment. But I don't think we have had a moment like this where the United States has been unquestionably at war with a foreign power, where American soldiers are dying as we speak, and it is being hidden actively from the public by the Congress. It's bad enough that we haven't had a debate and vote other than those forced by Democrats. We haven't had a hearing in the Foreign Relations Committee. We haven't had a hearing in the Armed Services Committee. Now, I think we know the reason. The reason is that this administration cannot defend and explain this war. But if they cannot, and if they are not willing to come to Congress and defend this war, it speaks to the indictment of the preparation and the strategy. I'm going to read to you an excerpt from a Washington Post article. Now, the Washington Post has been being very careful about their criticism of the president recently. A surge of additional U.S. forces in the Middle East and President Donald Trump's threat to obliterate Iran's energy infrastructure have set the stage for what U.S. and Israeli security officials increasingly see as the war's endgame, a battle for control of the Strait of Hormuz and key energy installations. Reopening the strait has emerged as perhaps the paramount objective of the war. Officials now believe it is unlikely to achieve goals that briefly seemed possible at the outset of the war, including overthrowing Iran's theocratic regime and putting a nuclear weapon permanently out of Tehran's reach. Okay, let me restate that for you. The Trump administration now says that the goal of the war is not to dislodge an anti-American regime in Tehran. It is not to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It's not even to permanently end Iran's ability to have missiles that can reach their neighbors or drone capacity that can provoke in the region. The primary goal now is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Here's the problem. The strait was open before the war began. We are now seeking to solve a problem that we created. This is insanity. $2 billion is a lot of money. That's the minimum amount of money that is being spent every single day on this war. There are over a dozen families who are burying their loved ones in the United States, and there may be dozens more if this war continues. Prices are skyrocketing, not just in America, but all across the world. Notices just went out from DuPont to their customers that the price of plastic is doubling. The price at the pump in many states is at $4, $5, and going higher. Fertilizer soon to be unaffordable for American farmers. The consequences of this war are stunning in their scope. Higher prices for American businesses and American families, a potential global recession, the wasting of billions of dollars of hard-earned taxpayer dollars, and new conflicts in the region that didn't exist before the war began. In the last day, there have been 12 missile attacks inside Israel. Just during this last vote, news broke of another missile attack on a community, Bnei Brak. 9 people injured, 6 children injured. Just in the last week, multiple missile and drone attacks on cities throughout Israel. 6 ballistic missiles from 2 separate attacks hit the Kurdish region in Iraq, killing 6 Kurdish fighters. An Iranian missile attack on the UK-US base in Diego Garcia. That's 2,500 miles away from Tehran. UAE has basically stopped giving out information about these drone and missile attacks because they happen so frequently. But on Monday, they did publicize they engaged with 16 drones and 7 ballistic missiles. That was just on Monday. Israel has invaded Lebanon. Those 2 countries are on the verge of full-scale war. 1/6 of the population of Lebanon has already been displaced. Syria is at risk of falling apart again. We have created a catastrophe in the Middle East. We are lighting taxpayer dollars on fire. We are causing prices to go up for everyone. And what is our new war aim? Reopening the strait that was open before we started the war. This is basic incompetence. I mean, this is what you get when you put talk show hosts and real estate developers in charge of American national security. A war that makes absolutely no sense. Even though our war aims have been reduced to simply undoing the damage that we created, it's not even clear we can accomplish that goal. Word is that Iran has now figured out that they can open the strait for limited purposes if you pay them. And that may now be the permanent state of affairs in the strait, that Iran will decide who gets to go through and who doesn't. That's not what happened before the war. We have created a new reality in which Iran has more power over the global economy than they have ever had before. We have not been able to stop their ability to project power. They're still today, 4 weeks into the war, firing missiles and drones at their neighbors. The regime that is in charge now is, according to analysts, worse than the regime that it replaced. Yes, we killed a whole bunch of people, including the supreme leader, but from everything we understand, the group now in charge is more adversarial to U.S. interests and is going to be more provocative in the region. So this war makes absolutely no sense. And the only way to save American consumers, the only way to try to put the pieces back together in the region is for the war to end. So I am glad to be joined here on the floor today by several of my colleagues. Many of them have introduced similar resolutions. This will be the 3rd time that we have brought a war powers resolution before the floor. Senator Kaine and then Senator Booker. This will likely not be the last resolution that we will bring before the floor, because we have a sacred obligation handed to us by our founding fathers for this body and the House of Representatives to decide war. It was a very deliberate decision not to give the power to make war to one individual, to the President of the United States, but to give it to the people. And the people make their voice heard through their elected members of Congress. And so if our Republican colleagues will not do their duty, if they are going to engage in an effort to hide the consequences of the war, if they are going to refuse to ask questions of our incompetent national security leaders at the White House who have waged this war without planning for the foreseeable consequences, then we will force a debate and a vote on this floor. This war is not going to make more sense the longer it goes. It's not going to become more popular. Right now, by a 26-point margin, Americans do not support this war. It will be harder as time goes on, not easier for my Republican colleagues to continue to vote for this war, as a vote against this resolution will be. But it's our responsibility under the Constitution to have this debate. And I'm glad to have my colleagues on the floor to make this case to the Senate as well. I yield the floor.
Senator from Illinois.
Mr. President, thank you, Senator Murphy. Every day since he started this embarrassment of a war, Donald Trump has saluted our troops with one hand and given them the middle finger with the other. Because despite the lies he tells on Truth Social, he is actively making the choice to use our heroes as cannon fodder. From the moment this conflict began, Trump has tried to shroud his incompetence behind their valor. When asked to justify his actions, he's tried to hide his ignorance and cowardice behind their courage. He's tried to act as if questioning why we're at war is the same as questioning the skill and bravery of our troops themselves. It isn't, not at all. I know that our military will always do the best job possible. When given a mission, our service members don't say, why me? They don't ask, but will I be safe? And they sure as hell don't run to their podiatrist crying bone spurs. No, instead, they pack their rucksacks, they lace up their boots, they show up, and they do what's asked of them, time after time and tour after tour. They will always, always execute their orders to the maximum capability of their professionalism, and they're proud to do it. The problem is the man who's giving those orders. The problem is that the commander-in-chief not only has no idea what the end state looks like in his war of choice, but probably doesn't even know what the term end state means at all. Look, I ran for Congress so that when the drums of war started beating, I'd be in a position to make sure that our elected officials fully considered the true costs of war, not just in dollars and cents, but in human lives of our heroes as well. So as those drums sound louder than they have in years, I'm here today because despite what he thinks, Trump does not have the authority to unilaterally force our nation into war. He may have never read the Constitution, but I have. So for the third time since this war began, let me direct his attention to Article 1, which makes clear that the president does not have the power to declare war. Only Congress does. We are the ones tasked with deciding when and how Americans ascend into combat. We are the ones charged with that most solemn duty. Yet, Trump is acting as if Article 1 simply doesn't exist, as if obeying the Constitution is something that's optional, as if our founding documents is just a yellowing, crumbling piece of paper he can crumple up at will. Refusing to allow him to get away with this must not be a partisan issue. No matter if you're struggling to pay rent or if your name is plastered in fake gold on a building on Fifth Avenue, no one can ignore the Constitution. No matter if you're a Mar-a-Lago worker pulling double shifts or the President of the United States, no one is above the law. And no matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you should know that our military men and women will always do their jobs. So it is beholden on us as legislators to do our jobs before more of our warriors lose their lives in service of theirs. Right now, our duty is to demand accountability. It's to get answers. It's to make sure that their mission is justified, feasible, and worthy of the sacrifices we're asking our military to make. That's why I'm here today, to make sure that we never again get ourselves into an ego-driven forever war, just like we experienced the last time a president rashly sent our sons and daughters into an unjustified war in Iraq. I'm here now to stop a man who was never brave enough to serve in uniform himself from using our heroes as cannon fodder. Look, I am no dove. I know there are certain solemn, urgent times when our military must make the call and be called up to defend our nation. There are certain moments when the threat in question is significant and imminent, when military force is the most effective tool at hand, when using it is necessary to protect Americans, and when using military force will not create more threats that it eliminates. Trump has shown no evidence that this was one of those times, yet he's had almost a month to do so. But if the administration actually does believe that this war is justified, then they need to come to Congress and tell us why. We're not hard to find. The Capitol is the building with the big dome on top. It's about a 20-minute walk from the White House. They just need to walk through the outdoors and actually do their jobs. They need to explain their case, respecting the American people enough to tell them why they're being forced to take on the cost of this conflict. They need to prove that they've thought this through, that they can tell us what their plan is to stop this war. They need to show us that they have even a concept of a plan of how to get to an end state in Iran that would make us safer, not more threatened. Then, when their case has been made, when Congress's debate is done, we in these chambers must vote. It's our job, it's our responsibility, it is our burden. Look, centuries ago, our nation's founders feared that one day America would be burdened with a chief executive who would be too fond of conflict and chaos, and that leader's affinity for bloodshed would have unthinkable consequences for the nation at large. That is why they placed the power to declare war in the hands of Congress, not a single person. Trump won't bear the cost of this war that he started. His children won't serve in harm's way, even though they could volunteer. None of them have. He's been lining his pockets with corrupt billions since the moment he took office, so he won't worry about how far the cost of gas has been driven up by his actions. No, it's the American people. They are the ones who suffer in wars of choice. So it is the American people, through their elected representatives, who should decide when war is worth that cost. And as those elected representatives, it is our obligation to consider the interests of our constituents over those of one man, and to stop our nation from teetering further into this nightmare. That's what we're doing here this evening as we vote on Senator Murphy's War Powers Resolution. Americans deserve better than unanswered questions, unjustified conflict, and unnecessary tragedy. Our men and women in uniform sure as hell do as well. So until we get some answers, I will keep coming to this floor. I will keep voting to withdraw our sons and daughters from hostilities with Iran. And I'm going to keep working to prevent the boots on the ground that the president so casually, so callously threatens when he talks with the press. And I'm going to keep demanding that the administration end this deadly vanity project if they cannot justify the cost we've already been forced to bear, both in dollars and cents, and daughters and sons. It's the least we can do for those willing to sacrifice the most for our nation. I yield back.
Mr. President,
Senator from California.
last Friday, public reports indicated that more than 2,500 Marines stationed at Camp Pendleton in San Diego County were now on their way to the Trump war in the Middle East, the Trump-Iran war. This is the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard the USS Portland, USS Comstock, and USS Boxer. Their voyage joins the amphibious assault force aboard the USS Tripoli, which also called San Diego home until last year. With great uncertainty, Californians are now being called upon to be the potential tip of the next spear in this war. The Marines' recruiting slogan, going back to their founding in 1775, is "First to fight." And they continue to live up to that slogan and that ethos. They have been boots on the beaches of islands in the Pacific, in the trenches of Europe, in the mountains of Afghanistan, in the sands of Iraq, in Syria, Africa, and theaters of American war everywhere and for centuries. And that's just it. They are boots on the ground in times of war. So as thousands of men and women have been called up to mobilize around the world, what solace can we offer their families about what awaits them? What can we tell them about this so-called excursion, as the president refers to it, or as he called it today, reluctant to use the word war all of a sudden, he called it a military operation. Well, this weekend marks 1 month that our nation has been at war with Iran. And already we've lost one American service member nearly every 2 days of the conflict. On the second day of the war, that service member was Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan from Sacramento, California. He was killed in Kuwait by an Iranian strike. His memory has burned brightly in the hearts of those who knew him, and since his death, we have seen tributes pour in. One said, "Rob was probably one of the best humans I've ever met. I know that if I called him today, if he was still here, he would drop what he was doing and help me." Another said that Chief Warrant Officer Marzan and his family served as the surrogate family for a lot of soldiers for their unit based in Des Moines. In the true American spirit, these stories have been shared widely as communities have come together to raise money to help fly those who knew him home to California for his funeral later this month. That is a solidarity that Americans know in a time of war. But the people who led us into this war did so without the consent of the American people and without the authorization of this Congress. The Commander-in-Chief, who called it war in his first public comments about the strikes in Iran, now engages in semantics while thousands more service members ship out halfway around the world. We were also told that this war would end soon, but now the President's extended deadline puts us on track for at least a month of conflict, with more fighting in the future if Iran refuses to yield. There is no deadline that anyone at this point can rely upon. At least one Republican senator is overtly calling for boots on the ground, saying, "We did Iwo Jima, we can do this." I just remind members the cost of Iwo Jima was high. 6,821 dead, 19,217 wounded. We've seen the timelines, the rationales, and even the baseline facts of this conflict change by the day or even multiple times during the same press conference. The goalposts have moved from regime change and imminent threat to long-term freedom for the Iranian people, and then back to preventing them from building out a nuclear program that was supposedly obliterated in a military operation only 9 months earlier. And we can be fairly sure before this war is over, perhaps even before this week is over, that the goalposts will move again. That's why last week we stood here and forced the Senate to again go on record. We cannot become Lucy with the football, constantly convinced that the latest market-calming post by the President in the morning will mean we will not have sent new Marines off to the conflict zone that evening. Last week I stood here and reminded my colleagues of the words of President Eisenhower, the architect of one of our nation's greatest military victories over a murderous regime. He said, "Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed." It is a reminder to all of us of the cost that Americans pay, not just in the loss of our service members and the pain that overwhelms their families, but of the hardships and poverty that we will no longer be able to address here at home. The illness that will go untreated, the school that will go unopened, the road that will go unpaved, the senior that will go unfed, as we drop the cost equivalent of 10 new hospitals a day on Iran. The Pentagon is proposing a $200 billion supplemental to fund this war. Do you know what that means for your family? That means that the cost for your family is $1,400. That's just the starting cost for this supplemental funding bill. $1,400 for your family. That's not including all the more you're paying at the pump and for everything else. But that is just the cost that is being proposed for your family. Well, tonight I stand here to remind my colleagues not just of Eisenhower, but of another Republican president, Herbert Hoover. Hoover said, "Older men declare war, but it is the youth that must fight and die." The youth who are put at risk, like the 2,500 Marines sailing from San Diego as we speak. The youth, like the thousands of others already sleeping in bunks aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford. In this case, older men have not even given them the decency of a declaration of war. Instead, we have quietly walked up to the red line that I know so many hold in their hearts when it comes to American military power being used abroad. We are on the cusp of American boots on the ground. And as the goalposts have continued to shift, and as we in this Congress have continued to abdicate our responsibility, I ask my colleagues, will that still be your red line? Or will the President be allowed to put American special forces in harm's way for a war that Congress has not authorized, that has not been debated, that has not even held a single open hearing to discuss, and a war whose true purpose has been kept hidden from most Americans? A war that by Saturday will have gone on for an entire month without the support of the majority of the American people, without the approval of the only part of government to whom the framers gave the power to approve military force, the Congress. 1 month of war. And for what? A new supreme leader? A new hardliner with a new appetite for revenge? A new windfall for Russia made possible by American sanctions relief? A new skyrocketing price of gas? A new rising toll on service members and their families? It is time to put a stop to this war before its costs rise further still. It is time for the Congress of the United States to do its job. Mr. President, I yield back.
Senator from New Jersey.
There's something awful going on here in the United States Senate, and people should focus on it right now. That the Senate is not doing their job. And we see a president unilaterally going off to fight a war, to declare war, without any authority from the United States Senate or the United States Congress. What does it mean when the body that is supposed to provide checks and balances checks out? What does it mean when the body that's supposed to provide oversight covers its eyes and refuses to see what's happening? What does it mean when the body that should be having hearings on this war will not hear, will not look, will not ask questions? We are in a constitutional crisis, and Americans are paying the cost. The worst of all costs, the death of our men and women, with 13 dead, over 200 injured, and Congress is doing nothing. No checks, no balances, no oversight, no hearings. What does it mean when Americans all over this country are paying the cost? With the worst energy shock crisis in the history of our country. According to the International Energy Agency, as of yesterday, the crisis we are experiencing is larger than the two major oil shocks of the 1970s combined. And what does Congress do? Nothing. No oversight, no hearings, no checks, no balances. Americans are feeling the pain already of this administration cutting health care for millions. They're feeling the pain already, seeing their energy crisis go up. They're seeing the pain already from billions being cut from our Veterans Administration and millions more being cut from student lunch programs and the services we provide to special needs. And Congress does nothing. We are supposed to be the body that declares war. Well, we're at war, but we also have the power of the purse. And what is happening with the purse right now? We have just spent $25 billion in Donald Trump's war. That kind of expenditure with no oversight, no hearings, no checks and balances. $25 billion is enough to provide health insurance for over 3 million Americans. $25 billion means 30 million children could have free school lunches. $25 billion could provide millions of Americans with affordable housing or housing assistance. There are things going on right now that nobody on either side of the aisle thinks the president should be able to do without any kind of oversight, without any kind of hearings, like give Russia billions of dollars, relieving them of sanctions, the very adversary that continues to prosecute their war in Ukraine and undermine our democracy at home. No hearings, no checks and balances, no oversight. This is not just a constitutional crisis. This is a shame upon this body. I'm grateful for the War Powers resolution that Chris Murphy has brought forward. I'm grateful for Tammy Duckworth, Tammy Baldwin, Tim Kaine, for us joining together to force these War Powers resolutions so that the Congress is not silent, that at least people have to take a vote. But think about what's happening right now. We see a president moving to move more American troops. It was reported that the Pentagon is considering deploying 3,000 soldiers from Fort Bragg's 82nd Airborne Division. That's 3,000 of our American courageous sons and daughters. No oversight, no hearing, no checks and balances. The biggest military engagement since the war in Afghanistan, tens of billions of dollars, American lives, the worst oil shock ever, prices going up, and what does this Senate do? Nothing. It's a shame upon this body. It is a surrendering of our duties. It is a submission before Donald Trump and his authoritarian-like inclinations to declare war and not come to Congress as the Constitution dictates. We swore an oath in this body to defend the Constitution. Our fealty should be to the Constitution and not what this president's doing. So, Mr. President, we bring War Powers resolutions, and we will bring more. My fear is that this body, amidst this shame, will be dismissed for a recess. How many soldiers will die during that recess? How many billions of dollars will be spent during that recess? How far will they go with this war? I call this what it is, one of the more shameful stretches of this body. No hearings, no oversight, no checks and balances. It's time that we stand up for the Constitution and stand up to Donald Trump's unconstitutional war. Mr. President, I know my colleagues and I, who have been calling these war power resolutions, we will continue to do so until this body does its job and lift the shame off of this body and checks a president who is clearly running us into a war with no off-ramp in sight and putting more of our men and women in danger as Americans suffer from skyrocketing costs. Mr. President, I yield.
The senator from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. President. A horrific murder in Chicago last week has reminded this nation that the battle to defend the American people, strengthen our republic, and wield constitutional authority for the common good is not confined to the southern border. It's being fought and lost right here in our own cities, in the heartland, in the streets where our sons and daughters walk to class or watch the Northern Lights. Sanctuary cities are not a polite exercise of state sovereignty or some virtue of federalism. Sanctuary cities are a declaration that illegal aliens' lives matter, but American citizens' lives do not. Sheridan Gorman was an 18-year-old college student at Loyola University, Chicago. Her family described her as a daughter, a sister, and the heart of their family. She was full of life, full of kindness, and full of love that she gave freely to everyone around her. She made people feel seen. She made people feel valued. She was the kind of kid, the kind of daughter American families hope to raise polite, hardworking, and the first in her family to go away to college, carrying the hopes of parents who still believe in the American dream. Sheridan Gorman was not some statistic. She was somebody's everything. Whether it was her friends, her family, or someone she just met, Sheridan had a way of leaving people better than she found them. She was only 18 years old and just beginning her journey as a college freshman, embracing new experiences, building friendships, and living the life every parent hopes their child will get to live. But last week, she was murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien from Venezuela. She was killed, her life taken from her, and a daughter stolen from her family by a criminal illegal alien who would not have been in this country but for the Democrats' open border and sanctuary city policies. Border Patrol caught him in May of 2023. The Biden administration's open border policies let him go. That was the Democrats' first chance to prevent Sheridan's murder. Democrat-run Chicago then had another chance to prevent Sheridan's murder. It arrested the same illegal alien, Jose Medina, for shoplifting. But Illinois and Chicago's sanctuary policies ordered the police to say nothing to ICE. So instead of handing him over to federal custody, they turned this monster loose on the streets of Chicago. The safety of American citizens be damned. And then last week, the same illegal alien shot Sheridan in the back as she went on a walk with her friends. Pause for a moment and really sit with the facts of Sheridan Gordon's murder. That illegal alien was previously in law enforcement's custody twice. And both times, radical Democrat policies released him back onto the streets to prey on the American citizenry. It is uncomfortable for Democrats to confront the reality that their policies and radical ideology are causing preventable murders of American sons and daughters at the hands of illegal aliens. So they try to deflect. A Democrat Chicago alderwoman had the audacity to say that Sheridan was in the wrong place at the wrong time. What a disgusting lie. Sheridan Gorman was in exactly the right place at the right time. She was exactly where an American college freshman should be, near the campus, with her friends, chasing the northern lights on a beautiful spring night. No, the only person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time was the illegal alien murderer, whose very presence in the country was the direct result of Democrat open border policies and sanctuary jurisdiction policies. He should have never been there. And if those policies had not existed, he would have been back in Venezuela years ago. Rather than admit this sanctuary city policy caused the preventable murder, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker released a statement saying that Republicans need to stop politicizing heinous tragedies. What an ugly, revealing statement. We're not politicizing the tragedy. We're exposing the truth. Sanctuary policies are getting American citizens killed. I know it. American people know it. And deep down, the Democrats know it too. The truth is, sanctuary cities force us to confront a test. The most fundamental test of any government. Does it still understand its first and only real obligation is to protect its own citizens? The duty is older than the republic, older than modern politics itself. It's the reason government exists. Yet through these policies, Democrats made a deliberate choice. They sided with Jose Medina, a criminal illegal alien, over Sheridan Gordon, an American citizen and a college freshman. They've chosen an open borders ideology over the American nation. At root, the scourge of sanctuary cities forces us to answer the same question as the Save America Act. Who or what comes first? It is the American people, American sons and daughters, or is it illegal aliens and this radical open borders ideology, or dare I say, a theology? Not in theory, not in slogans, but in practice. When the handcuffs go on, when the phone call to federal law enforcement is made or not made, when lives hang in the balance. It's the answer, if the answer is not the American citizen, if the answer is not Sheridan Gorman or Laken Riley or Stephanie Minter or Katie Abraham, then we are no longer arguing about immigration policy. We are confronting something far more fundamental: whether our government still understands the basic purpose for which it exists. The American people know the answer. Democrats' conduct betrays their answer. Democrats value illegal aliens more than Americans. This is a sick ideology. I actually can't believe in a state where I come from, Harry Truman would be rolling in his grave. John F. Kennedy Jr. would be rolling in his grave. This idea, this toxic empathy, this suicidal empathy to placate the left is driving this debate we're having right now, where they don't want to fund federal law enforcement. They would rather a sanctuary jurisdiction not tell ICE that a murderer or a rapist is being released from prison to be deported. They don't want to do that and hold on to this altar of this crazy ideology. So all this discussion we're having about this negotiation, I have been skeptical from the beginning. I litigated with Democrats on Title 42 and Remain in Mexico. Deep down in the DNA now is something has been lost. I don't understand it. But Democrats admitted as much last night in an interview. By failing to give illegal aliens a pathway to citizenship, this Democrat noted that we failed to deliver for the people we care about the most: undocumented migrants. The people Democrats care most are not you or your family. Instead, it's Jose Medina and the 15 million other illegal immigrants that the Biden administration led into this country. Once you understand this reality, that this is the driving, operating principle of the modern Democrat Party, this is not an outlier. The other actions are predictable, including this negotiation, this supposed negotiation that's happening, that's supposedly taking place. Once you see this hierarchy of needs and wants and preferences, everything makes sense. Democrats right now value illegal aliens more than traveling Americans. That's why they have defunded DHS and TSA. They value illegal aliens more than the American families hit by a disaster. That's why they're defunding DHS and FEMA. They value illegal aliens more than Sheridan Gorman, Laken Riley, or Stephanie Minter, or Katie Abraham. That's why they have built sanctuary cities in Chicago, in New Orleans, in Los Angeles, in Minneapolis. As a senator from Missouri, where we still believe the first job of government is to keep Missouri families safe, I say this plainly: prioritizing illegal aliens to American citizens is unacceptable, and it is downright un-American. The alternative, putting Americans first, which used to be something maybe we could agree on, is not complicated and is consistent with both the Constitution and common sense. Enforce federal immigration laws. These laws were passed by Republicans and Democrats alike, enforced by Republican and Democrat presidents alike, until recently. So enforce the laws, deport the illegal aliens, prioritize the safety of American citizens over ideology and illegal aliens. Because at the end of the day, this is not about ideology or politics. It's about whether or not we remain a country in which the government fulfills its most basic and fundamental obligation, a country where the law is enforced, a country where the responsibilities of governing for the common good is taken seriously, a country where the safety of its people is not treated as negotiable. If we cannot agree to affirm all those principles, then we are drifting slowly but unmistakably away from the principles that sustain a free and ordered society. And that is a drift we cannot afford to ignore any longer. I want to close by reading part of a statement from the Gorman family. We will not allow this to be dismissed as wrong place, wrong time. This was not random misfortune. This was a violent and preventable act. We are gravely disappointed by the policies and failures that allowed this individual to remain in a position to commit this crime. When systems fail, whether through release decisions, lack of coordination, or unwillingness to act, the consequences are not abstract. They are real. And in our case, they are permanent. This case must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of both state and federal law. There can be no gaps, no shortcuts, and no second chances that put others at risk. Accountability must be complete. To the Gorman family, I am so sorry for your loss. As a dad who has a daughter headed off to college, my first daughter headed off to college next fall, I cannot imagine the grief and the pain that you feel when you sent your little girl off to college and she's murdered in cold blood by somebody who should have never been here. And there were 2 opportunities to get him the hell out of here. I pray for you, I pray for Sheridan and all those who loved her, and I pray for every parent who now lives with the fear that the next knock on the door will be one that destroys their world. We will not let this be memory hold as wrong place, wrong time. This was a violent, preventable act enabled by radical policies that put illegal aliens ahead of American citizens. This case must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of state and federal law. Accountability must be complete, and it will be. It is time, long past time, for this Senate to answer the question the American people have already answered. Whose country is this? Enforce the laws, deport the illegal aliens, end sanctuary cities once and for all. We must reclaim the foundational promise of this republic that a nation of the people and by the people must be for the people. The American government is for the American people. Mr. President, the American people have made their choice clear. American citizens come first. That is the fight I came to Washington to wage, and with the help of the American people, that is the fight we're going to win. Mr. President, I yield.
Senator from Wisconsin.
I rise today in opposition to Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. Donald Trump came into office promising that he would lower costs and end foreign wars. But with this war, he's broken both promises at once. Wisconsin families are already seeing higher costs at the pump and on airfare. Wisconsin farmers are staring down higher fertilizer and fuel costs as spring planting is underway. Meanwhile, the uncertainty and chaos caused by this president is keeping interest rates high and shaking the global stock markets. Donald Trump is raising costs on Americans at the same moment he's spending billions of dollars on a war that Wisconsin families did not choose. In just 6 days, Trump's war in Iran cost American taxpayers almost $12 billion. We are now nearly a month into this war, and it is estimated that we have spent around $30 billion of taxpayer money. What Donald Trump spent in 3 weeks is what it would have cost to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for a full year. Republicans said that extending these health care tax credits for working families was too expensive. But they have not said a word about Trump spending $30 billion for another war. That money could have stopped 22 million Americans from seeing their health care costs increase by double, triple, or worse. It could have stopped 1 million people from canceling their coverage because the costs were simply too high to manage without those tax breaks. That That $30 billion could have paid for more than 30 million children's school lunches. That $30 billion could have put a safe roof over the heads of more than 3.1 million Americans. That $30 billion could have covered a year of childcare for nearly 2 million children. Using that money for an illegal war that no one wants is a choice. And now President Trump is reportedly planning to ask Congress for $200 billion more for his war with Iran. And here's my question. For what? That's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely don't know. And the American people don't know either what the goals of this war are and why American families are being asked to shell out billions of dollars for it. The Trump administration has so far been unable or unwilling to give the American people a straight answer. Just as Donald Trump tells the American people that we're close to ending this war, strikes continue, and all signs point to this conflict continuing to grow. We're hearing reports that the Pentagon is making detailed preparations for deploying U.S. ground forces in Iran. 5,000 Marines and new warships are being deployed to the Middle East. And just today, it was reported that roughly 3,000 soldiers who are trained to parachute into enemy territory are being deployed to the region. I've been demanding hearings for weeks so that Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio can answer our questions under oath and in public before the American people. They need to answer why they're using taxpayer dollars on this illegal war, instead of bringing down the costs of health care, housing, gas, groceries, and child care for the families I represent. Donald Trump ran and won on lowering costs for Americans. But his agenda has done just the opposite. He started expensive wars, pursued tariffs that jacked up costs on consumers, and slashed programs that help Americans afford their health care and put food on the table. Enough is enough. It is time for the Trump administration to make their case to the American people. I personally don't think that they have one. But at the bare minimum, they need to tell Congress and the public why we are in this war, putting more service members' lives at risk and not focused on the kitchen table issues. I yield.
Senator from Virginia.
Mr. President, I rise in support of Senator Murphy's War Powers Resolution, which I'm proud to co-sponsor. I came to this body in 2013, and as I've described on multiple occasions on the floor under both Democratic and Republican presidents, I came with one obsession, and that obsession is that the nation should not be at war without a vote of Congress. That obsession was born out of twin experiences, having a child in the military and then having been governor of Virginia and watched my Virginia Guard members deploy repeatedly into Iraq and Afghanistan over the course of the years that I served in office. I went to too many deployments, too many homecomings. I went to too many wakes and to too many funerals to simply allow war to be waged on autopilot or at the say-so of any president, Democrat, Republican, no matter what their previous experience in military matters or lack of experience was. The founders of the Constitution were wise to decide that committing our kids, lives into war was not a decision that should be made by one person. There are exceptions recognized in the Constitution. A president can take action without Congress if there's an ongoing attack on the United States in self-defense. No permission is needed. A president can initiate military action if Congress has previously voted on an authorization that covers it. But other than that, there's no shortcut and there's no easy pass lane, and there shouldn't be. And so this is now the third resolution, and I thank my colleague, Senator Murphy, for bringing it, to basically ask the question of this body, have we seen enough? Have we seen enough that we should at least have public hearings about this war? Have we seen enough that we should have a debate about whether this war should be authorized by Congress or not? And we plan on coming back every week and asking that question, have we seen enough, until the Senate does what the Senate is supposed to do according to the founders, to the framers of our Constitution. Since we were here last week, a number of things have happened. The number of casualties has continued to grow. The cost has continued to grow. There has been significant reporting yesterday that other nations are encouraging the United States to continue this war. The reporting yesterday was that Saudi Arabia is encouraging the United States to continue this war. The reporting last week was that Israel is encouraging the United States to continue this war. Israel and Saudi Arabia are sovereign nations who have the right to make their own decisions for their own people. But they don't have the right to suggest what is the right course for the United States. We have very different interests. We have very, very different interests in those nations, and we should make the right decision for ourselves after consideration. The price of oil has continued to significantly increase from last week. When I took the floor last week on Senator Booker's resolution, the price of oil had gone up 60 cents a gallon since before the war began on February 28. Now it's gone up $1.02. Just to convert that into the cost at the pump for Virginians, Virginians buy 8 million gallons of fuel at the pump every day. So at $1 a gallon, that's $8 million that Virginians are spending for fuel every day that they weren't spending before the war. And all indications by those who are experts in this area, and I do not proclaim expertise in energy, is that the energy shock is likely to continue to drive up costs at the pump for Virginians and Americans for a very long time. Why did the framers set it up so that war should be debated before it's initiated? So that you could ask questions. What is the rationale for the war? The president has suggested it was to obliterate a nuclear program that he claimed had been obliterated, to stop a ballistic missile program when the missiles' progress in Iran would have been years before they could have developed a missile that would have reached the United States, to change a regime, to back up Iranian protesters, maybe to control Iranian oil. We would have been able to ask questions about the rationale and get an answer rather than a shifting collection of answers that have been given. We would have been able to ask questions about, what are your plans to minimize harm to civilians? We've already seen tragedies with respect to harm to civilians. What are your plans to protect allies who, if Iran is attacked, are likely to face retaliatory attacks from Iran? Many of our allies were not prepared to face what Iran did because the United States did not consult with them. And Mr. President, just to use one item in this that would clearly have been a discussion if the administration had done what the Constitution requires and come to Congress. What about the Straits of Hormuz, where massive percentages of the world's energy, critical minerals, fertilizer, and other byproducts come through the straits? What is the plan for that? What is the plan to make sure that the straits are not choked off in a way that hurt everyday American families in the entire global economy? I mean, this is not an unforeseen problem. The British closed off the Straits of Hormuz in the early 1950s to punish Iran. The Shah of Iran threatened that many times. During the war between Iraq and Iran in the 1980s, as those two nations were fighting, tankers were hit in ways that often shut down the Straits of Hormuz. So the Straits of Hormuz being shut down and then having a massive effect on the global economy was an absolutely known and completely foreseeable consequence of a war in the region. And yet in the last week, the reporting of this is that either the White House didn't consider it, or the White House was warned by military officials that this could happen and it would hurt the United States and others, a warning that they ignored. Now, either of those options is bad. If they didn't consider the possibility that history demonstrated was a likelihood, that shows incredibly slipshod planning. And if they considered that possibility because it happened before and dismissed it, that also demonstrates a shocking degree of naivete. And so we see just in that one instance how Virginians are being punished by paying more at the pump because of the closure of those straits. This is an entirely predictable consequence of war that didn't get an airing before the public or before a Senate who could have asked challenging questions. Some believe subjecting a war plan to being asked challenging questions is a burden or is a hassle or, it's going to be something that we don't want to do. No, that's exactly what should happen. Any proposal of this magnitude that's going to risk the lives of our troops should be subjected to the most searing examination that we would do of anything in this body. Mr. President, I want to conclude because there are others who want to speak, but I'll just take it back to Virginia. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Virginians are currently deployed on the USS Ford Carrier Strike Group. That was a strike group based in Norfolk that deployed in June. When it deployed, the normal deployment for a carrier strike group is 7 months. So the expectation of all who deployed was they would be home by the holidays. They would be home with their family by the holidays. Instead, at the end of last year, the president ordered that the deployment be extended so that the Ford that was positioned in the Middle East could come into the Caribbean or Pacific to assist in the effort to ultimately invade Venezuela. And so they extended the deployment another 2 months. And then the Ford was told that it needed to deploy back across the water to provide support for the invasion and the attack of Iran. And so the deployment has been extended further. The Ford's about to set the record for the longest deployment ever, but this has a cost. The Virginians and others who were deployed with the strike group thought they were going to be home at Christmas. And now it's being extended more and more and more. And the Ford Carrier is suffering significant maintenance challenges that threaten the actual lives of those on board. First, it was threatening quality of life with problems with the toilet systems and other onboard systems on the carrier that are not hard to predict when you run a carrier at a much greater length than was planned for the original deployment. And these affected basic quality of life and morale. But it got more serious. Last week, we learned that a fire started in the laundry facilities on the Ford, that it took 30 hours to put out, and 200 sailors on the Ford suffered smoke inhalation injuries because of that fire. Now, recently, the Ford has been pulled out of frontline combat support activities and taken back to Crete for repairs. But again, these sailors aren't coming home anytime soon. And that ship that was supposed to be out there for 7 months is now into the 11 months. I guess it would be now coming up on 9 months with more to come. This is the kind of human cost that happens when you go into a war without a rationale or without a plan. And so what we need is a plan, I believe, to bring this to a close. We were at war in the Middle East for 25 years, and I've yet to hear a single colleague of mine come and make a speech on the floor to suggest that those 14,000 plus American lives killed, or the 65,000 plus Americans injured, or the $8 trillion spent. I've yet to hear a single person come here and say that was a chapter in American life that we should be proud of. We should have learned something from it. The first thing we should learn is that another war in the Middle East probably makes no sense, but we certainly should have learned that before we go into one, we have to examine it in significant detail to make sure that we're not sending our sons and daughters into harm's way for no valid reason. With that, Mr. President, I thank you and I yield the floor.
Senator from Idaho.
Mr. President, I'm not going to speak for a long time. I've given this speech over and over again. Some people say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get the same results. The Democrats here have been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and they are going to get the same result again tonight. Look, the conflict that we're in with Iran right now was not started by the United States. It was started by Iran. When the Iranian regime took prisoner our staff at the embassy in Tehran 47 years ago, held them for 444 days, and then over the next 47 years have continued to kill Americans by the thousands, not by the hundreds, but by the thousands. And they do it in the most insidious ways with roadside bombs and that sort of thing, simply because they're Americans and they're present in the Middle East. The President of the United States said, "We have had enough." He had very good reason to pull the trigger at the time that he did. And of course, those, as time goes on, will come out more and more. The fact of the matter is, we are in conflict. We have our brave young men and women on the ground. We have our brave young men and women fighting for the United States of America. So, we need to back those people. We need to back the President of the United States. We all know this isn't going to go on very long, but it needs to be done. And our friends around say, you need to get this done now that you're there, complete the job. The President is going to complete the job. I'm going to end this with a couple of messages, same message I've been given for a long time. The first one is to the Iranians. This is over. You people have lost. You have no Navy. You have no Air Force. You are running out of missiles and other material to fight this. This is going to be over very soon. The other message I would have to the Iranians is, no one has come to help you. And, breaking news, no one is coming to help you, with one exception. And I'll talk about that in a minute. First of all, let me tell you who's not coming to help. The Chinese are not coming to help. The Russians are not coming to help. The North Koreans are not coming to help. The Cubans are not coming to help. The Venezuelans are not coming to help. The worst actors on the planet, who are friends of the Iranians, are not coming to help. This is all on you, Iran. No one's coming to help you, except there are 47 people over here who want to help you. They cannot help you. They've tried and tried and tried. They cannot help you. What is going to happen here on the floor today is, on our side of the aisle, we're going to stand behind the Commander-in-Chief. Most importantly, we're going to stand behind our fighting men and women on the ground because they're involved in a kinetic battle. When this happens, whatever happens, we, every American, should stand behind our fighting men and women. They need to continue on. They need to complete the job. The President of the United States is going to do this. So, to my friends on the other side of the aisle, stop this. Don't try to help the Iranians. You're the only entity on this planet trying to help the Iranians. Stop it. Vote with us. This is going to fail tonight, and it would be nice if you joined us in standing behind our fighting men and women as we try to end the regime of the last bad actor in the region. I yield the floor. Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsterbrooks.
President,
Democrat leader.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Now, I thank Senator Murphy for his great leadership on this issue, for speaking so clearly and fiercely about the need for this resolution. This war has dragged on for long enough. It's long past time for it to come to an end, and today, with this resolution, the Senate must assert its power on matters of war and peace. This is the third time that Republicans have been given a chance to do the right thing and end this war. It is the third time, though, they stick their heads in the sand and pretend this war does not exist. But the war is expanding. The Senate has an obligation to step in. I say to my Republican colleagues, if there was ever a time to stand up for the authority of the Senate, stand up for the powers given to us through the Constitution, the time is now. 13 servicemen have been killed, American servicemen, thousands more injured, energy prices above $100 a barrel. And now the Wall Street Journal reports the Pentagon will deploy another 3,000 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne. Enough. The War Powers Act allows questions to be asked, allows the public to be drawn into the discussion. That's the way to end endless wars. Not to tell no one what's going on, not to keep it secret, not to give anyone else any authority. That's a loser. And it'll be a loser for the American people. The American people are tired of sending our sons and daughters to fight endless wars. Americans are exasperated every time they go to the gas station and pay $4 a gallon. They're tired of Donald Trump making outrageous and deluded statements like saying he does both have a plan and does not have a plan. This is who's leading the war effort? Someone who changes his mind every day, who can't answer the question of what's the goal here, what's the end game, how much does it cost? So enough is enough. Donald Trump does not have the authority to wage this war without the explicit authority from Congress. I thank Senator Murphy for pushing this resolution. I'm proud to support it. I urge some of my Republican colleagues to vote yes. Yield the floor.
Senator from Connecticut.
Mr. President, whatever you think about this war, it should be unacceptable to all of us that we have not had a single public hearing, a single opportunity for the American people to hear directly through their representatives the justification and the end game for this war. I thank my colleagues for joining me here today. Pursuant to Section 601B of the International Security Assistance and Arms Export Control Act, I move to discharge the Committee on Foreign Relations from further consideration of S.J. Res. 116 to direct the removal of the United States Armed Forces from hostilities within or against the Islamic Republic of Iran that have not been authorized by Congress.
The clerk will report.
Motion to discharge S.J. Res. 116 from the Committee on Foreign Relations.
Mr. President, I know of no further debate.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, the question is out of the motion to discharge. Is there sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks. Mr. Armstrong. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Blunt-Rochester. Mr. Booker. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Britt. Mr. Budd. Ms. Cantwell. Mrs. Capito. Mr. Cassidy. Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Moran, Mr. Moreno, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Also Brooks, Baldwin, Bennett, Blumenthal, Blunt Rochester, Booker, Duckworth, Durbin, Hickenlooper, Hirono, Kane, Kim, Murray, Ossoff, Padilla, Reed, Rosen, Schatz, Schumer, Slotkin, Smith, Van Hollen, Warner, Welch, Whitehouse. Senators voting in the negative: Armstrong, Banks, Blackburn, Britt, Budd, Capito, Cassidy, Collins, Crapo, Curtis, Daines, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Haggerty, Hawley, Husted, Hyde-Smith, Johnson, Kennedy, Langford, McCormick, Moody, Risch, Rounds, Schmidt, Scott of Florida, Scott of South Carolina, Tillis, Tuberville. Mr. Lee, no. Mr. Sullivan, no. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Sheehy, no. Mr. King, aye. Mr. Fetterman, no. Mr. Merkley, aye. Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Justice, no. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Marshall, no. Mr. Gallego, aye. Mr. Murphy, aye. Ms. Warren, aye. Ms. Hassan, aye. Mr. Warnock, aye. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. Cruz, no.